Hey, everybody. Welcome into the back room. I'm Andy Ostroy.
Oh, I mean, you can't go a day without thinking about what he's done to this country, because he's such a little baby that he's thrown 250 years of democracy out the window by not accepting the results of an... I mean, it's so crazy. He's such a sociopath. He's so insane. He just couldn't admit to losing. And we know he lost. He knows he lost. And look how he's fooled everybody. He's convinced all these people that he didn't lose. He's such a sick man. He's so sick.
That's Larry David giving you yet another reason why you should love him. Thanks for tuning in today, guys. We have a very exciting show. We're going to be chatting with Don Lemon in just a second. But first, thanks for being here. We appreciate you listening. And we'd love to hear your comments. So email us at backroomandy@gmail.com and or post on our social media, and we'll read some feedback next time. And if you like the podcast, please follow or subscribe and rate and review, and you'll be notified every time we post a new episode. Here's some feedback we received this week on our conversation with Tom Nichols. James Richardson, MD, writes, "Just listened. As always, Tom is informative, insightful, and entertaining. And anytime he can throw in a Cliff Clavin impression, I'm there for it." Leslie J. writes, "You have the most fantastic run of great interviews. Jane Lynch, Pete Souza, S.E. Cupp, Rachel Bitterkoffer, Brian Karam, Jennifer Rogers, and then you have Tom Nichols. Thank you for a great start to the week." All right, let's get to the big things of the week.
All Americans need a Bible in their home, and I have many. It's my favorite book. It's a lot of people's favorite book. This Bible is a reminder that the biggest thing we have to bring back America and to make America great again is our religion. Religion is so important. It's so missing, but it's going to come back, and it's going to come back strong, just like our country is going to come back strong. I'm proud to endorse and encourage you to get this Bible. We must make America pray again.
He's endorsing his own Bible. You know, I mean, really, seriously, think about it. Who more do you want talking about God, religion, and the Bible than Donald Trump?
No one.
It's like the second coming. I mean, it's Jesus.
Paragon of
That's what
virtue.
she said.
Gorgeous. Gorgeous.
Hey, I have many books. I have a lot of books.
But it's a special bonus because we didn't see it hear it in that clip. But it does include the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence.
Sure. Other documents he fully respects and appreciates. By the way, isn't commandment number 8 in the 10 Commandments, thou shalt not overcharge your base for ridiculously expensive Bibles?
But it's leatherette bound.
$60. And it's in partnership with Lee Greenwood. You know, it must have been like he was sitting there going, okay, Ted Nugent, Kid Rock, Lee Greenwood. I think I'm going to go with Lee Greenwood. I mean, why is he selling a fucking Bible, and why does anyone care?
Because he can. He can make money off of it.
Well, he ran out of gold sneakers. So what's next?
I mean, think about it. NFTs of him looking like Rambo, sneakers. He's back in the day with like the liquor and the steaks and the planes and the magazine. Like, we all know how that went, right?
He's got lots of lawyer fees he has to deal with.
Yep.
The Bible.
Why not?
The Bible. During Holy Week.
Oh, that's right. That's why. Because
Holy
of the
Week.
timing.
Well, when you're going to sell it, you got to sell it when it's going to be
That's right, when
most
it's hot.
desirable.
Yeah.
He posted a video on Truth Social that said, quote, "On June 14th, 1946, God looked down on his planned paradise and said, 'I need a caretaker.' So God gave us Trump."
What more could you ask?
I just got to say, God giving us Trump reaffirms my atheism.
That's fair.
Right?
Reasonable.
Is that a fair thing to say?
Yes.
Okay. If God is sitting up there somewhere going like, all right, who can I put on this earth to represent me?
It's the ultimate test in faith.
Well, I mean, he's obviously appealing to Christian nationalists. That is his base, and they're going to vote. They're going to come out and vote, and 100% of them are going to vote for him.
back in October, on his first day of the civil fraud trial in New York, he shared an AI-generated courtroom sketch, remember that? Depicting himself sitting next to Jesus. Now, like, if the second coming actually did occur, and Jesus did decide to come back, would he choose to sit in a fucking courtroom next to a rapist and a fraud?
I mean, depends who your constituents are.
Also this week, Trump posted a message that he received from a follower, and it said, quote, "It's ironic that Christ walked through his greatest persecution the very week they are trying to steal your property from you." And speaking of that, let's go to this clip.
Well, it's so sad. First of all, I'm a guy that grew up in New York. My father built the skyline of New York, and this is election interference. And they're trying to put my father out of business. They're trying to take all his resources that he would otherwise put into his own campaign for presidency. This is New York State. This is what we're seeing. Letitia James campaigned on this promise, and now they're making him do something that's not physically possible. Putting up a $500 million bond. Bonds that size don't exist in this country. A $500 million bond? The banks all testified Trump was the greatest borrower we've ever had. I mean, there was no victim. This is a crooked system with a crooked attorney general in a crooked court that literally wants to put my father out of business.
Oh, cry me a fucking river, Eric Trump. I mean, Daddy built the New York skyline?
I had forgotten that apparently.
What a family full of whiny, pissy snowflakes. All they do is whine and complain.
I was really just focused on whether he needed a better acting coach or a better speechwriter for that little soliloquy.
And what is it about Eric and Junior that every time they speak, they look like they're overdosing on crack cocaine? They sound like... They make Jim Jordan sound like he's talking slowly.
Well, yes, they're probably on cocaine.
And, this whole notion of victimless, right? Because nobody lost any money. Can I go to a liquor store tomorrow and rob it? And then take the money and go to Atlantic City, put it on a roulette wheel, which I'm told I have like a 50-50 chance of winning if I play black or red. And then when I win, go back to the liquor store, not only pay back the original money I stole, but the liquor store's share of profits, and then say, hey, I can't be arrested because nobody lost any money, there's no victim, right?
I like that business plan. Let's go.
Let's do it. It's pretty good.
I mean, seriously, it's like, what does that have to do with anything?
There's so much to unpack with that entire nonsense that he just said. Also, that such a bond does not exist, could not exist. I mean, why it doesn't exist is because they don't have any money.
Yeah. Well, listen, here, I'm going to set the record straight, Eric Trump. Okay? You and your brother and your daddy and everyone else in your orbit who is whining that no one has ever been treated like Donald Trump is being treated, 100% true. The reason for that is not because of any witch hunt or anything rigged or any deep state conspiracy. It's because Donald Trump is the most corrupt person to ever become president and then wildly abuse the office for his own personal, political, and financial gain. That is it. Period. End of fucking story. So Donald Trump got a win in the appeals court this week. The court said that instead of paying $464 million in an appeal bond, he only has to come up with $175 million. But then the judge in the hush money case ruled that the case will not be dismissed, and that's going forward. And that will be, in my opinion, the first trial where Donald Trump becomes a convicted felon. I think that's going to happen by the end of May or first week or two of June. Also, Trump this week, he's worth about $6 or $7 billion more than he was last week because his meme stock, DJT is the symbol, Donald Trump.
Of course.
Technologies. Just keeps going up, although yesterday it went down, so I think it may have hit its high. It's a fucking penny stock, meme stock. It's going to gyrate wildly, and anyone who thinks he's worth $6 billion today on that stock and may not be worth zero on it next week is kind of crazy, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's definitely a meme stock, and it's probably going to be filled with SEC violations within, week after week. But he only has to get people to put a couple $1 million in here and there to keep the stock up. He'll probably, I'm guessing, break some rules, but the whole board of directors are his friends and his family.
Yeah, but that further exposes them to massive lawsuits.
Of course, but he doesn't live in the future. He lives in the moment. And
but
so
they don't.
It takes months for these things to happen. And if he becomes president, the SEC violations go away anyway. So he has nothing but, all he has to do is roll the dice on him being president, and that's it.
But the more macro point that I'm making is that no one, especially Donald Trump, should bank on any of that money at any point in the future, because it ain't like sitting there owning Facebook or Intuit or whatever. There's no value there. It's propped up by air, hot air.
Totally agree. The only thing about Trump is he lives for the moment and he doesn't care about the future. And that includes breaking the law in every way, shape, and form. So he has nothing to lose because he's probably going to go to jail if he doesn't become president anyways.
We'll see. We'll see. Nobody knows. Trump also tweeted this week about Joe Biden. You guys ever hear of Joe Biden?
No.
Apparently he disinformates and misinformates a lot.
That's Joe Biden for you.
How? Why he calls Biden Buden and literally makes up words.
Kofifi.
But it's
Matt,
like,
you're on fire today.
But it's like nothing. It's like nothing. We're still like talking about Joe Biden being old. Did you see him go down the stairs with Obama yesterday out of the plane?
He was skipping.
He was fucking skipping in the rain. Oh,
yeah.
And also Trump this week. My theory on Trump is that because he's a pathological liar, the truth literally is the exact opposite of what he says. So this week he started to post about RFK, saying like, I'm glad he's running. He's a radical lefty, which of course means he is terrified of Bobby Kennedy. And apparently, according to the pundits who are talking to people in Trump's campaign, he is concerned. They're all concerned about Bobby. So that's the buzz out there, that they're all concerned about Bobby. We'll see. All right, let's get to our winners and losers.
My winner is Marilyn Lands, who campaigned on abortion rights, won a special election to the Alabama State House, in a victory that Democrats say illustrate voter backlash to extreme reproductive restrictions imposed by Republicans. My loser, the tragic collapse of the Baltimore Key Bridge.
My winner is the RNC this week because they got a big win in the Third Circuit Court of Appeals in Pennsylvania. They're going to be able to toss out a disproportionately Democratic vote, mailed-in ballots that don't have a date written on them or have a date that's wrong, even if the ballots arrive on time before the election. My loser was John Eastman because, of course, he discovered what Rick Wilson said a long time ago, everything Trump touches dies, and I am hoping Jeffrey Clark discovers that really soon.
My winner, also Marilyn Lands, who, by the way, won in a landslide. She won by, I think, 25 points. And Democrats, who in another post-Dobbs, post-Roe, post-IVF special election, flipped another House seat, demonstrating yet again that voters on both sides of the aisle want Republicans out of their uteruses. My loser, the Republican Party, which continues to be punished for its sick, twisted obsession with vaginas and uteruses. All right, let's get to the weekly rant. Let's talk about Donald Trump's latest grift, the ridiculously expensive $60 Bible that he's selling during Holy Week in a partnership with country music star Lee Greenwood. He of I'm proud to be an American fame. Let's set the record straight. Trump is a hypocrite with giant heathen balls. He's a fake Christian who never met a sin he didn't love to commit. That he's vomiting about faith, religion, and God would be like Jeffrey Dahmer warning about the health risks of cannibalism. Trump, better known as Orange Jesus to evangelicals who've anointed him the chosen one, is desperately trying to appeal to a much broader swath of Christian folk as the November election looms large. He's like a dying atheist suddenly finding God. But let's relish for a moment the delicious irony of Trump's latest scam. He wants Christians, people of faith, to buy his good book so he can raise money to pay off his judgments and legal expenses for being a corrupt fraud who cheated on every one of his wives, fucked porn stars and strippers, and most likely underage girls, bragged about grabbing pussies, and who sexually assaulted and raped many women. Oh, yeah. That's some straight out of the Bible shit right there, isn't it? Let's take a moment to review the first chorus of Greenwald's cheesy anthem, which has become MAGA's version of the Star-Spangled Banner and makes the typical Trumper hotter than two rats screwing in a wool sock. The lyrics are, and I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the man who died, who gave that right to me. And I'd gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today. 'Cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA. Well, you know what, Sparky? I'd say you're definitely forgetting the men who died. Because they died fighting tyranny, fascism, and dictators. They died defending our democracy. And you support Trump, a democracy-raping traitor who not only loves dictators, he's promised to be one should he win in November. So you can sing and weep and wave the flag all you want. But as long as you worship Donald Trump like a rapacious hillbilly at a pig roast, the words to this song, let alone those in the fucking Bible, don't mean shit to you. All right, it's time for Don Lemon. He is a best-selling author, journalist, and former anchor of the long-running CNN primetime program, Don Lemon Tonight. He made headlines recently when his newly launched The Don Lemon Show, originally set to launch on X, formerly Twitter, was canceled by Elon Musk after their sit-down. The new show is available on YouTube and all audio and video platforms. Don has won a variety of distinguished awards, including an Edward R. Murrow Award, multiple Emmys, and a Peabody Award, among others. He's also been recognized as a leading influential figure by Ebony magazine, The Advocate, Out, and others. And in 2011, he broke barriers by revealing he was gay in his autobiographical book, Transparent. His 2021 book, This Is Fire, What I Say to My Friends About Racism, debuted at #1 on the New York Times bestseller list and was inspired by the murder of George Floyd at the hands of a Minneapolis police officer. Don, welcome into the back room.
Andy, thank you. I really appreciate it. It's good to be with you.
I've been an admirer of yours for years, and we recently had a chat at Kara Swisher's book party, so it's great to have you here, finally.
Yeah. Thank you.
So,
finally, right?
Yeah. So that, well, you've been a busy guy.
And this is before all the crazy chaos, correct?
Yes. Well, life, I guess, for you has been kind of busy for the last 2 years, year and a half. So a lot of changes, and I want to talk to you about all of that shortly. But let's go back a little bit in time, because I'm always curious, and I love giving our listeners an opportunity to understand who people are versus simply what they do. So let's talk about childhood a little bit. I know you grew up in Louisiana. What was the family like? Were they political? How much exposure did you have to that kind of stuff? And how much of it did you take from childhood into what you eventually did as an adult?
Not political at all. I don't ever really remember us discussing politics in our home, so I didn't really carry politics. I'm actually not that political. I just happen to work in cable news, and the stories for the last couple of years have centered around politics. And of course, there's always politics, because we're covering matters of the world. But growing up, didn't discuss politics. I'm not into politics. I don't really like that so much, but it just so happens that I was sort of thrust into the political realm working as a journalist.
I find that really interesting that you're not a political guy. I mean, I've watched you for years, and it's just been all politics. So you're just like thinking of your, shop grocery list while all that was going on at 10 o'clock on CNN, or?
No, I have to do my job. I mean, listen, when the news turned to, when there was a missing plane, I did a missing plane. When the news turned to something that happens in sports, I leaned into that. When there was sadly a train derailment, I would do that. If there was sadly a plane crash, I'd have to do that. I had to cover 9/11. So I covered what's in the news, and politics had been in the news a lot, especially during the Trump days, because it was so unusual.
And he liked you so much.
And he loved me. He really, when people talk about me that much and they say that they hate me, or I'm, what do you call me, the dumbest man on television? I think people who are very critical usually have a soft spot for you because there's something that draws you to them.
Well, I always say with Donald Trump, because he's a pathological liar, the truth is literally the exact opposite of everything he says. So if he calls you dumb, it means he's intimidated by you and thinks you're smart and is actually afraid of you in some regard.
It means you're under his skin because you're touching a nerve, something that's important to him, that you're really getting at it. So, and also I think he realizes the importance for him, at least, and the gain in it of having an enemy that he can, use to someone that he can use. Like, look, this guy's an enemy, and whatever he makes someone into an enemy, that makes it into a story. That's good for him. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
It's almost like it's not, I shouldn't say it's not like a sitcom. It's like a drama. It's like a TV drama or a movie. Like, you have to have a good guy and a bad guy. And in his movie, in his mind, he's the good guy and I'm the bad guy.
Yeah, that's
And that helps
exactly
the story.
the foundation of everything he says and does. There's an enemy.
Yeah.
He's being unfairly treated, and therefore
Yeah.
the base is being, it's like they're not coming for me, they're coming for you. Like, that's how he
Yeah.
can survive. It's like the blood that runs through his veins, because we know that he can't just stand there and talk policy, because not only would that bore the shit out of him, but he'd have 5 people at his rallies. They're not there for the policy, they're there for the Jerry Springer show.
And they're there to hate someone like me, and he understands that. Right. Like, you need antagonists and protagonists and a foil and ingenue and all that stuff. So he's very good at creating a story, creating, a plot line.
Yeah. And so in 2011, you wrote a memoir called Transparent. And in that book, you talked about sexual abuse as a child. I don't need to ask you the details of that, but I'm more interested in understanding how that episode, that chapter of your life, impacted the rest of your life. Were you able, through your life, to put that in a place that didn't drag you down? Or is that something you still struggle with?
No, I don't still struggle with it. I'm sure it shaped part of my personality, how I deal with life. But
How
there was.
How do you think?
Well, there was a time, I did not. For a while, it was hard for me to trust people, but I also think it helped me in that that I'm able to read people really quickly, and not that I'm making snap judgments about people, but maybe I am making snap judgments about people. But I can usually suss someone out really quickly. And I can, as with Donald Trump and as with many people, I can see when someone is a grifter, someone is a maneuverer, when someone is trying to take advantage of you. Like, I can figure that out pretty quickly, just from that experience. And so it gave me sort of a hyper awareness of who people are immediately. But also, it made me sort of retreat from the world a little bit. I moved into sort of a fantasy world as a kid, and I would create my own little world that I lived in. And so it made me, I was isolated for part of my childhood, but not only because of that, but because I was, I wasn't out. I didn't, as a kid, like, you couldn't be gay and out in the 1970s and 80s. So, that shaped it a little bit. But yeah, the being abused as a child really, did a number on me as a, and shaped my view of the world, and also it shaped part of my adulthood.
And have you dealt with that through therapy or just on your own?
Yes.
Yeah.
No, well, both. First on my own, and then through therapy, because I had to turn to therapy because, it was something that you couldn't talk about, with my pastor. I grew up Baptist. I went to a Catholic school. I certainly couldn't talk about it with a priest or either my pastor or anyone in the church, because it was just, it was an abomination, and I was bad and sinful and all of that. So once I became an adult and I realized that you couldn't pray it away, I began to seek therapy, and that was really helpful.
So you were also your high school class president, true?
I was.
Not surprising. But you were also a college Republican, which is surprising.
I was initially, and then very quickly I realized, like, hey, I was, I think I have more conservative leanings than people realize. Everyone thinks, like, I'm some big liberal or whatever, which is nothing wrong with being a liberal. I'm not liberal, and I'm not conservative. I'm just an independent person who, I judge things on the merit. I judge people on how they treat other people, and what they find important and what they do, and how they live their lives. So I don't really judge people based on political parties. But yes, I was a young Republican in college. I actually have a letter from Ronald Reagan somewhere in my memorabilia, because I think I wrote the White House, or I called the White House and wanted to speak to him. I forget exactly what it was. I think maybe I wrote him, and then he wrote me back. Yeah. And then I realized, like, he wasn't doing anything for HIV patients, and they were demonizing gay people and people dying. And I was like, you know what? Screw this guy. I'm not dealing with this anymore.
Well, I was going to ask you, as a young gay black man, what was it that drew you? Before you had that epiphany, what was it that drew you to the Republican Party?
It was a different Republican Party, but beginning to change. I mean, that's when the moral majority started coming in, and that's when I was like, okay, I'm not this stupid. I may be young and naive, but I can't deal with this. So I think basically I've just started to mature. Listen, I was a young person. At first, I wasn't a huge fan of Ronald Reagan, but I also had conservative leanings because I grew up in the South. I grew up in Louisiana. I grew up in the Deep South. And so my family socially was conservative. Maybe I think my parents were Democrats, but they weren't, like liberal Democrats as like people are now. And my dad actually, when he retired, would listen to Rush Limbaugh all day. So it was very interesting. So we never really talked about politics, but as I got older and my dad retired and he started listening to radio because he didn't have anything to do. So he would spend his free time during the day listening to Rush Limbaugh. And my mom said, my mom took his radio and said she was going to have to deprogram him. But that was the extent of politics. Like, but growing up really young, we never really talked about politics.
And this is kind of interesting. I saw that you graduated Brooklyn College with a broadcast journalism degree?
TV, radio / broadcast journalist, yes.
Oh, guess where I graduated and what my degree was.
Brooklyn College, was it broadcast journalism or was it TV, radio?
Well, that's a good question. I've been saying broadcast journalism for all these years, but it might actually be TV, radio. But that's where I went, and shockingly, we're going to break some news here today. I think you got a better ROI on your degree than I did.
Yes. I think you're doing okay. Did you have Professor Meppen?
No, I was going to ask you if you had Bruce Porter.
I think I remember Bruce Porter. Was he bald?
He was. He was. And I remember after I graduated in '83, he ended up maybe like a year later having the cover story in the New York Times Sunday magazine. I was like, wow, that was big. But
oh my God, '83. Oh, you graduated '83. You're ahead of me, buddy.
Yeah,
I didn't get there until the '90s.
And actually, I think Porter said to me, "You want a job at like Kansas Magazine?" I was like, "No." I was from Queens, and I wasn't going to the Heartland or any place near there. And my first wife and I moved out to L.A. and I tried for 3 months to get a job anywhere in broadcasting or journalism. And I as you know, was like a Brooklyn College degree is not Northwestern or Columbia.
Well, but Brooklyn College had a great TV radio program. That's why I went there. I mean, I was, I could have like gone to NYU or I went to LSU, and I don't know if you know the story. I left LSU because my professor told me I would never make it as a journalist. And I was dealing with the Louisiana and all the race BS. And so I moved to New York and took a job at Channel 5 as a trainee in the newsroom. And then enrolled in Brooklyn College because I didn't want to have my parents footing the bill for NYU or something like that. And it just had the best broadcast and TV radio program. And so I went there, and it really changed my life. It was the most diverse place I'd ever been, Brooklyn College. And what was it, the Flatbush exit, and was it 4, 5, and 6? I forget which train.
No, it was a great school, but I think, for a guy like me to try to get my first job in one of the most major
it's not like
markets,
Columbia.
Yeah, I mean, I fell into marketing for like 35 years, but I saw that and I was like, wow, that's an interesting coincidence. So also in your memoir, you came out in 2011, and I want to ask you about what the landscape was like in the news business then, because that seems like a really bold move to have done that. It doesn't seem like there were many, if any, really outed major news people back then. So you really were taking a risk. I mean, we recently had Shelley Wright, a country singer, on this podcast.
Love Shelley.
Yeah, and she did.
She just texted me, by the way, after the Elon interview.
Yeah,
I
she's
love
great.
her.
And she did, she at the height of her career, she came out. And so what was it like back then for you? And did you think that it was going to be over? Or did you kind of know that it might be a soft landing?
No, I didn't know. I didn't think there was going to be a soft landing at all. I was really nervous about it. And I didn't plan on doing it, Andy. I was writing a book. Someone said, "Hey, I think you have a book in you." I'm like, okay, maybe it's just a, gas, but So, so I was in the process of writing this book, and it was about my journey and, travails in journalism. And And I started writing about it. And then I got to this point about how did I get here? And, you know, what was I doing? Was I single? Blah, blah, blah. And I was like, wow, how do I don't want to have to lie in this book. And I said, I have to be honest with the audience. I can't have a different set of standards for myself and then for the audience or for the subjects that I would be interviewing. And if I expected transparency from them, then I had to be transparent myself. So I just wrote in the book that, hey, I moved to New York because I wanted to get away from Louisiana. My journalism teacher told me I wouldn't make it. Plus I was gay and I wanted to come out and I wanted to be myself and be free. And I couldn't do that in Louisiana. So I left. And I just, basically that was it. It was like a page and a half, 2 pages. And I mean, you would have thought like, you know, I was going to get the Nobel Peace Prize because, you know, the New York Times wrote about it and NPR and every other, you know, big publication. And, you know, they talked about it on television and I was invited on the talk shows and I thought I was going to lose my livelihood. I thought that audience wouldn't watch me, people wouldn't watch me, people wouldn't be engaged, that, you know, I would be shunned and ostracized. And there was some of that, but for the most part, it was support and people were like, you know, hey, congratulations that you can be yourself and I'm really rooting for you. But there was some like, you know, you're going to go to hell and that kind of thing. But it was the most, it gave me the most autonomy that I've ever had. It was the most self-assuring thing that I've ever done, the most empowering thing that I've ever done. And I'm glad I did it. I can't imagine life being in the closet now. I can't imagine anyone being in the closet now, especially if you have a platform. I don't get it. I know people say, hey, it's nobody's business and people don't need to know about your sexuality. And I just think that's BS. Can I say bullshit on this thing?
You can say whatever you want.
I think it's bullshit because I think there's deception and silence. And I think we're in a time now, especially where it's important for people to stand up and be who they are, regardless of where you are on the Kinsey spectrum of between completely homosexual and completely heterosexual and all that. I think it's important for people to stand up and I think it's empowering. And I think visibility is, you know, what's needed for anything. If you're an abuse victim or I like to say a survivor, it's important to be visible. If you are a member of the LGBTQ community, it's important to be visible because it takes the stigma off of it and it educates people about, you know, who you are and how society should be moving and where we should be.
Mm-hmm. And I agree with you 100%. Is it easier though for a Don Lemon to do it than the cashier at Duane Reade?
Well, I mean, look, I think that if you're in an abusive situation and, you know, there's physical or mental, you know, violence or anguish that you're going to face, I think that is your own choice. It's literally your own choice. I'm just saying people who have, you know, a platform and people who have some autonomy, I think it's important for them to do it. I mean, obviously for me, it would be no physical abuse unless someone came, you know, just randomly did something to me, but I'm not in that sort of situation where I have a family member or a guardian or something who's going to kick me out and I won't have a place to live. And those are different circumstances. I'm talking about completely, fully functioning adults. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a difference. Yeah. Yeah.
And just for the record, I think you had a lot to lose in doing it. So I want to make that clear that I think it was a pretty courageous thing you did, and the
had a lot to lose. Thank you. I had a lot to lose and nothing to lose. If you understand that.
Mm-hmm. Sure. So you got the Don Lemon Show, which recently launched. Such a quiet launch. You know, really boring. Nothing exciting happening around it.
Nothing to see here.
No. So for the folks at home, so to speak, who don't really know what it is, tell us what the show is, and more specifically, what you hope to get out of it in terms of how it needs to, or you want it to be distinguished from all the other shows and podcasts out there.
It's a streaming show, and then the audio version, the audio portion of it is on wherever you get your podcast, but it's a streaming show, fully video. It's similar to the show that I had on CNN, but it is, I get to talk to people longer. I don't have to rush off to commercial breaks. I don't have to, say, hey, I got to go. It's the top of the hour. Somebody else's show is coming on. And I think people feel freer to share who they are and to be more candid because it's, you're not sitting there in front of a giant television in front of you and it's not necessarily live. But it is more of an in-depth approach and a more authentic approach than what I had on linear traditional television. So you get to see more of who Don Lemon is. I get to lean in more, and I don't have to worry about the hall monitors. We can say and do whatever we want. Like I said, can I say bullshit on this show? And you said you can say whatever you want. I couldn't do that.
Although I do it now. Isn't it crazy that now you tune in to CNN and they're all saying shit and bullshit? It's like,
well, I started that. So congratulations to you. I mean, you're welcome.
Kudos to you then.
Yeah, because I went there and I looked at the rules and it said cable is not part of broadcast, so the rules are more lax when it comes to the FCC. So I would say I would just say things and what are they going to do? But I think I had more editorial freedom on CNN than anybody else, and it was due to number one, who I was or who I am, and number two, because of the hour of the night. I was on at 10 p.m. Eastern. And I was like the last person in the building. It was on at 10 and 11. So, there were things that I could say and do that others couldn't. And others still don't feel the freedom, I think, in cable, not just CNN, to be able to do and say those things. But, that's who I am. So I don't really concern myself with any of that. But yes. But still, I have more freedom here. And also, this is me. I get to decide 100% what the content is, how long we go, and how it's presented. So.
Who's on your wish list?
Who's on my wish list? Well, I would love to get the president to come on before the election. It would be interesting. I'd love to talk to Donald Trump. I'll put that out in the universe. I won't say it's not going to happen. I'll say, he's going to be on the show, but we'll see. Only because it's not because, I have some thing about Donald Trump, some sycophancy, but I think it's, coming up to a very important election. I think it would be important for people to hear from him and for him to be questioned and to see someone like me and him in conversation, I think would be very interesting and informative for the electorate.
I agree with that. And that leads to my next question, which is, are there people that you wouldn't have on?
Well, here's the thing. Yes, there are people I wouldn't have on, but there are also people I would have on in this platform that I wouldn't on CNN. Well, no, I shouldn't say that. I would not give. Look, I'm not in a position now to do town halls and what have you. So I would not give someone a live, unchecked. Some people live, unchecked access, to the public for hours on end without checking them, without being able to check them, or running, press conferences or rallies. So this is a different platform. So in this platform, I can question people and offer context and also fact check them in real time or either afterwards. So there are very few people I wouldn't have on, except for I'm not sure if I would want to have on, a neo-Nazi or white supremacist or someone, a QAnon person who's spreading falsehoods, or a MAGA person who is just spreading lies about, the election deniers and those sorts of things. Those people are kind of, there's the viewer or the user, as they call it in streaming, they get nothing out of that. So why would I have that person on? It doesn't offer anything, any knowledge or any enlightenment to the person who's listening.
Mm-hmm. Do you think if you interviewed Trump one day, you'd have the mea culpa moment? Like, Don, you're not that dumb. You're nasty, but you're not dumb. Like that? You think that would end up happening? Because he's always nicer to people in person.
Oh yes, well he was very nice to me in person. He said I was always fair, and he wanted me, he wanted me to interview him. I think I interviewed him like 6 or 8 times but I never interviewed him as president. I didn't get the opportunity to do that. But I think yes, in person I think he would be kinder because he tends to be that way. It's the same thing as when I interviewed Elon Musk. Like he has keyboard courage now. He's a keyboard warrior where he can go on and say whatever he say about me on Twitter, but he wouldn't do it to my face, which says a lot about. Yep. Either not brevity, but being brave or cowardice, right?
Right.
and I think the same thing about Donald Trump, but I think he would be loath to come in and answer questions because he would just be concerned because he couldn't steamroll me as he does a lot of people.
Mm-hmm. It is kind of contradicting, though, to say that you are both fair and dumb, right?
Well, no,
if you think about it, like if you're being fair, then you obviously have thought your shit through.
Yeah, you're a smart person, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think he has to say that because I think he knows that I have very smart and fair points about him. But in order to to counteract that, he has to say and get his people to believe that I'm dumb so that they don't believe me. Truth and facts are not on his side. So what does he have to do? He has to attack the person, the organization, or the institution that is countering him with facts and information. So he has to say that either the organization or the institution is not legitimate or flawed, or the person is not legitimate or flawed or is dumb. And so, I mean, it's very simple. It's easy.
Mm-hmm.
You know that he does that, and people just believe him. Like, yeah, Don Lemon is dumb, or the Justice Department is not fair, or they're out to get me, and I'm the most persecuted person, and so he has to get people to believe that because otherwise, he would be exposed for the charlatan that he is.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about your Musk interview. I have to say, as someone who's had some quasi-exposure in my career to Hollywood, it's such a Hollywood scenario. Like, if I was more skeptical than I am, I would say, you know what? This is a brilliant mastermind plan by Don Lemon to launch this new show in the most incredible way possible without costing him a dime. Like, it is almost too good to be true because it wasn't an exclusive deal with him. You're on other platforms, you're on YouTube, and you could still post a damn thing on Twitter, on X. So what did you lose? So in my, maybe I'm a little skeptical, but I'm like, come on, this was planned, wasn't it, Don? This has to have been planned.
Of course, the whole thing, it was my master plan.
You're a genius.
No, it wasn't. But I mean, it did work out that way, but it wasn't my plan. My plan was, as I said, I went into this with the best of intentions. I really wanted to reach a new audience. I wanted to be able to get on Twitter and fight it out with people. And I wanted people to get to know about me. I wanted people in that interview to get to know about Elon Musk. And I really wanted I wanted to start this content partnership and this distribution partnership with him by exposing people to two people who had completely different worldviews, but who could sit down and actually have a conversation and go away either agreeing, disagreeing, or agreeing to disagree.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Because I think the level of discourse in the country has devolved, to a level that I think is below the Earth's crust, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sure how much I've helped that over the last couple of weeks with the Elon Musk thing, because it seems like it's just put people back further into their corners, which was not my intention, but that's how it sort of ended up. And I think that's Elon's fault, not mine.
Well, you're a journalist. You asked questions. I mean, that's your job.
I did, but I mean,
your job.
That's my job. But I mean, I don't know what he expected,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know what his sycophants and the apologists expected, because they're like,
Well, but you know what they expected, and you know what he expected. He expected to get his ass kissed, and his sycophants expected you to do that. That's how it works.
And I didn't.
And you didn't. You did a solid job, a respectful job, a civil job, putting him on the spot with very important. I mean, look, the guy is the richest human on the planet. Okay, he's got an ego the size of the stratosphere. Like, no one is supposed to coddle him. Were you surprised at how defensive and insecure he was?
Of course. I was shocked as I was sitting there. I was like, I can't believe why. I couldn't understand why he was getting so upset. And all I was doing, as you know, Andy, I was just saying, you said this.
Mm-hmm.
You tweeted this. You said that airlines and that the skies were less safe because of diversity, equity, and inclusion. What is your evidence?
Mm-hmm.
I don't have any evidence. Let's see what the comments say. I'm like, well, that's not facts, or those aren't evidence. You said that Duke Medical School and that medical schools around the country were lowering their standards because of diversity, equity, and inclusion. There is no evidence of it. I would love to, if you have some evidence, show it. He didn't have any evidence. And days after our interview, if not a day after it aired, Duke University released a statement saying that what Ben Shapiro and Elon Musk are claiming about us lowering medical standards is completely not true.
Mm-hmm.
We don't do. So, I mean, I don't understand why he became so upset. And I think it's because, well,
but
I do understand it.
You do, right. You do understand.
I think he was exposed,
Mm-hmm.
and he had no answers for it except for look in the comments and people will put the evidence in the comments. And it's like, well, okay, before you put that out there, a hypothetical, shouldn't you have evidence? Shouldn't you make sure that it's true? You're a very important person. People listen to you.
Mm-hmm.
He felt he had no responsibility in that, and also in content moderation.
Mm-hmm. He spent an inordinately large amount of time lecturing you on free speech and censorship, and then swiftly proceeded to censor you and cancel you. It is astounding to me, the hypocrisy. I mean, literally, he went off on you about free speech and said, you believe in censorship, Don? Like, and then cancel your fucking show because he didn't like what you said. Like, amazing, isn't it?
And I didn't really say anything. I mean, what did I say? I just asked him questions.
No.
And he said, I don't like what Don Lemon is doing is what he did on CNN. And it was, CNN is failing, which was, I mean, that was just sort of like, it was sort of a personal dig. But that's why he wanted me on the platform, is because of my work on CNN. So that didn't make sense. And the other thing is that, he said, well, what I'm doing on cable is not going to work. Well, there's another former cable news anchor on his platform who is doing exactly what he did on cable news, but he has no issue or problem with that. I mean, I think that's very telling, and I think that, shows the hypocrisy of it all. Well,
you've said that you felt he was uncomfortable in some regard because he was sitting across from a gay black man.
No, I didn't say that. I said that answering questions from people like me, not from people who look like me. And in the response, if you look at the podcast and on the streaming shows, when I said that, people said, well, Don Lemon is saying that Elon Musk had trouble because of what he looked like. And that's not what I was saying. I meant someone who came from the perspective that I was coming from, someone who he said he wanted, he believed was more liberal. Mm-hmm. So I was answering questions from people like me, not who look like me.
Got it.
But so what I asked Kara Swisher in our interview was, people are saying and producing content around that, do you think that he had trouble sitting in front of a gay black man? Because that's what people are asking. And so she answered. And then people were saying that Don Lemon is calling Elon Musk racist. I never called him racist. So I asked Kara Swisher, you know him, you wrote the book on it. You have a book out now, Burn book, about Elon Musk. Mm-hmm. Do you think he's racist, considering the response from that interview? But I never called him that. Mm-hmm. So, except for, I did a podcast the other day and they asked me if I thought he was racist. And I said, look, I think he traffics in racist tropes. I think he had an issue, obviously, with the whole Jewish thing that he retweeted, and he Auschwitz with Ben Shapiro. That's a form of racism. Mm-hmm. He writes about DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, which means what? People of color and women and underserved communities of the world, or people of the world. Basically, that says that they're inherently less skilled and less intelligent. Mm-hmm. And so he's at least trafficking in racism, and that makes him racist adjacent to me. So, mm-hmm.
Do you think he's a homophobe?
I don't know. I don't know. I can't really answer that. And, the interesting thing is that I don't pay, I didn't spend that much time on Twitter before this. I sort of backed off from it because it had become so toxic. And I had been spending more time on the platform trying to get used to being back on it. So do I think that he's homophobic? I don't know. I mean, my initial thing would be, I don't think so. Mm-hmm. I've never really heard him say anything that is homophobic. Now, transphobic would be a different thing. So, I don't know. I can't answer that. So I don't really have a good answer for that. I don't know enough. how he feels about gay people or that sort of thing.
A big takeaway from the interview for me was the moment when you asked him about his retweet of a comment somebody made about Hispanic invasion.
Right.
And he sort of poo-pooed it, and then you pressed him on it, and then he said, I just retweeted it or reposted or whatever. And you said, but yeah, isn't that kind of like a tacit endorsement of something if you retweet? And his answer was something like, I just think it's important for people to see all sides. And you were like, well, why would it be important to amplify something that seemingly is racist and not even true? I mean, what kind of bullshit answer was that on his part?
Well,
I mean, did I just answer my own question?
Well, I mean, you have to ask him. But for everything, I mean, that for the Great Replacement theory, which he and also his sycophants or apologists don't seem to understand, was part of a Jewish trope, right? An anti-Semitic trope. That's where it started, and now conservatives or MAGA people are using it, or I don't know, anti-immigration people or whatever you want to call them. They're using it now for Hispanic people or Latino people, and they're calling it an Hispanic invasion. And he said, I never called it an Hispanic invasion. I said, yes, but you retweeted something that called it an Hispanic invasion. And he said, well, just because I do that, it doesn't mean that I agree with it 100%. And I said, well, why would you put something out there like that? If you don't agree with it 100%, then, I certainly would not retweet or respond to something that I did not agree with 100%. And so his answer was, that's what his answer was. I couldn't understand it. The same thing about DEI, where I said, he said, the medical standards are being lowered. And I said, there's no evidence. And he said, yes, there is evidence. I said, no, there's no evidence. And he goes, well, it would be awful if they are doing it or if it were to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, yes, that would be awful.
But they're not.
Everyone, that no one would disagree with that. It's not happening. So then why are you even putting out a hypothetical like that? Because it would just be awful if it were to happen. I said, yeah, it would be awful if the windows of this Tesla headquarters would fall out. But why would I even think about it? Because it's not happening, and it's not going to happen unless there's a tornado coming or a hurricane, and it's like, oh, we need to get away from the windows. But that's not.
Well, it may be speaking to his underlying biases and prejudices, because why else would he do that? Is there anything you would have changed reflecting back on it?
No, I think I would have followed up with some things. Look, as you go back over work that you've done, you say, oh man, I should have done this. I should have done that. I would not have changed anything as it relates to the questions. I think what I would have done was follow up a little bit more on the content, the content moderation. Two things. Number one, he said, when he talked about hate speech, he said, you guys look at the amount of hate speech or things that people, put on the platform, and it's such a big platform and there's a lot, but you don't look at how many people actually see it, and they don't see it a lot because we suppress it. And I should have said, okay, fine, then what else are you suppressing? Who else are you suppressing? What are the rules about, who gets suppressed and who doesn't? And is that just completely at your discretion? Mm-hmm. Can you suppressing me? Are you suppressing Andy? Are you suppressing liberal points of view? Are you suppressing, LGBTQ points of view, or people who are, are supportive of diversity, equity, and inclusion? So I should have followed up with that. And the other thing on that particular topic, which I should have said, was it only takes one person. Mm-hmm. And one person is the wrong person to see some of the stuff that's out there, that you put out there, and it takes one person to go into a church or a synagogue or a movie theater or a supermarket and shoot up people or kill people when they admit that they have been radicalized through social media in their own manifestos and through their own words. They'll say, I was radicalized through social media. So it takes one person. So what does it matter if one person sees it or a million people see it?
So in our final couple of minutes, I want to ask you about a couple of CNN things. The first thing is, during the Trump years, and a lot of people I think have short memories. I don't. I remember how I was feeling during Trump and the pandemic, which unfortunately happened to coincide at the same time. And so here you are, you're sitting at home, you're miserable, you can't do anything, Trump is in the White House doing and saying the most stupid shit. And there were a few people like you, Jim Acosta, Brian Karem, even people like Stormy Daniels and Michael Avenatti, Alec Baldwin on SNL, in some way taking on Trump directly when nobody else was, standing up to him and making people like us at home think, okay, maybe we're ultimately going to be okay. So I just want to say on behalf of a lot of people I know, we appreciated what you did back then, because hearing voices of reason in a sea of insanity was very, very important. And I think it's important to say that. The flip side to that is, while you also have taken some important stands, like calling Trump a racist, like pointing out the threat of white nationalism, taking on Vivek Ramaswamy, you've had your share of moments that weren't so pleasant. In particular, the Nikki Haley thing, where you said the essence was women can't reach their prime once they pass 50. Sitting here and talking to you for the last 45 minutes or so, watching your career, getting a sense of who you are as a person, I find it hard to believe that Don Lemon really believes women can't reach their prime once they pass 50.
I said that in the response,
what happened
but
there?
one writes about that. I said, well, basically, and I don't spend much time thinking about it, but I will tell you, my comments were misconstrued. And I said in there, I'm not saying that. That's not what I believe. But basically, what I was saying, and I didn't do a good job of it, was that she's doing to older people what society has done to women for decades or for centuries. And that's, think that just because you're a certain age or because you're a female that you aren't viable. I think Nikki Haley's a viable woman, but I thought she was discriminating against older people because society sees women as, at a certain age, that it's past their prime. I would never even say past their prime. That's something that's not in my vernacular that would even come out of my mouth. I was using her own words. So to say that older people are past their prime and should be put out to pasture, that is the same thing that society has done to women for decades. And she should know better as a woman than to do that to older people, because my mom is 80 years old and is still kicking and is very smart. I thought about my good friend Clive Davis, who is 90 years old and is still kicking. I thought about John Lewis, who was an older person who is still going. And I thought about RBG and just older people who were still in the game, Nancy Pelosi, and who were still, at the top of their game. And she didn't get to decide who was in their prime and wasn't, because society doesn't, quite frankly, think that women are in their prime at a certain age. I didn't believe that. I don't believe that. I think that you get to decide when your prime is. So my comments were misconstrued, but I take responsibility because I didn't say it well enough. I don't believe that at all. That's not what I believe about women or about anyone. I think that people are viable at any age, and they get to decide when they want to leave the game and what they want to do. And there should not be, some test for someone to decide if they want to run for office or if they want to, join the PTA or whatever. There shouldn't be some cognitive test. I just thought it was hypocritical of her to do that. That's it.
Well, I think you're right, and I think the ageism we're seeing in this country right now, in particular with Joe Biden, is no better than any other ism that we're dealing with.
And the thing is, if I had believed that, I wouldn't have apologized. I apologized because it came out wrong, and I tried to explain it. I was like, no, don't even try to explain it. Just apologize, because people know that, especially from your decades of work and, how I've elevated women, people who ran my show. My show was run by mostly women. I think there were like 3 guys on my team. And I always say, if you want something to get done, hire a woman, because, and I was the only boy in the family of all women. So I think people would understand that. But, I think I think I touched off a very sensitive subject in society that needs to be addressed. And I thought it was a good point to address those issues. But, people are afraid of actually being real and authenticity and actually having real discussions about those things. And so rather than do that, they just sort of scapegoat you and blame you and want to push you aside, rather than actually dealing with, I think, very important issues.
Well, as I said before, I found it hard to believe that in your heart that's what you were attempting to say and what you felt. And so I thought it was important, for me at least, to give you a chance to clarify that.
Yesterday I'm getting married, and I went for a fitting.
Oh, congrats.
And walking down the street. Thank you. I was walking down the street, and this woman came up to me and she said, "Oh my God, I miss you on CNN. I thought what happened to you was bullshit. I knew you were." Everywhere I go, women say that, like of all ages. Like they're like, "I knew exactly what you were saying. I knew what you were trying to say. I don't get it. I'm so mad at what happened to you. But hey, look, it's over. It's gone. I love everyone at CNN. I have there's no ill will for anyone. I was back on the network, with the Elon Musk interview. It's the best journalist in the world. And I wish them the best. And I'm in a good place right now. And I think they've moved on. I think they're moving to a good place. And so, good luck to them.
Mm-hmm. So my final question to you is a window into the soul question. We like to try to find out who people really are. Music is a way to do that. Give me Don Lemon's top 5 musical artists of all time.
Let's see. Vanilla Ice. No, I'm kidding. Oh wow! I got that laugh. Wow, who is that?
That's my co-producer Jen Hammoud, who clearly thinks you're funny.
One, right?
Either she clearly thinks you're funny, or you have a really shitty music taste.
No, so I would have to say Marvin Gaye and Whitney Houston, Dolly Parton. Judy Garland, Marvin Gaye, Whitney Houston, Dolly Parton, Judy Garland, and did I say Aretha Franklin?
No,
Aretha. Yes,
perfect.
Yes,
great list. Don, this has been a lot of fun. I do hope you'll come back, and I wish you a lot of good fortune with the show. I listen, I love it, and we need more voices like yours.
Thank you. I forgot Michael Jackson and Elvis, and I mean, there's so many.
I know it's an impossible question to ask.
Yeah, and I love the Stones, and I love Led Zeppelin. It's like I have so many, I just can't name.
Swift. What about Taylor Swift?
I love. No, here's what I'm going to be really honest, and hope people don't get mad. Swifties don't come after me. I think Taylor Swift is an amazing businesswoman. I admire her business skills. I think she's extremely talented. I love her empowerment for young girls and for women, and just for all people. Her music is great, but it's not of my generation. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, I know exactly what you mean.
I mean, go Taylor Swift. She is an entire business in herself, like an entire economy. She can move the world politically. Go, go, go. Am I going to sit down and listen to a Taylor Swift album? No, I'm probably going to sit down and listen to an Aretha Franklin album, but that doesn't take away from Taylor Swift's talent and whatever. You asked me what I'm listening to. I just don't sit around and listen to Taylor Swift music, but I admire her tremendously. I think she's fantastic.
I admire her the way you say, but for me, it's not in my wheelhouse. But.
No, it's like, it's not my wheelhouse. Like, I'm not an acid rock person. You know what I'm saying? And look, I don't really like show tunes that much. Don't tell anybody. They'll take away my gay card.
What?
So. No, not really.
You're about to get that's the news here. You're going to get kicked out of the gay club because you don't like show tunes.
Not a big musical person. I mean, every once in a while, some things, but for the most part, no, it's not my thing. But I do love Judy Garland.
I was going to say, you saved yourself with Judy Garland. So you're like, should we kick him? Nah, there's Judy Garland. Let him stay. Don, thanks again for coming on. Let's do this again soon.
All right. Thank you, Andy. It's my pleasure.
Take care.
Bye.
This episode of The Back Room was edited and produced by me, Andy Ostroy. It was co-edited and co-produced by Matty Rosenberg and co-produced by Jen Hammoud. Our theme song was composed by Andrew Hollander, and our logo was designed by Cricket Langell. And special thanks to Patricia Wind. Please take a moment to rate and review the podcast, and also follow or subscribe. Until next time, keep your eyes on Washington, Hollywood, and your own backyards, and have a great week.